We don't always have to see our clients face to face.
Communication is transparent, clear and concise, and then trust in the team to carry out those instructions rather than micromanaging them every step. Try and surround yourself with experts.
Service businesses are naturally require a lot of sweat equity.
The company can also pay into a pension scheme, which increases their net wealth as a person, but also is an allowable expense for a company.
Your job as a business owner isn't to be the person doing the job, right?
What you really need is an accountant that can speak business language rather than accountancy jargon.
Welcome to the podcast from Cold to Close. My name is Saeed and I'm the founder here at SRC Growth Partner, a growth company that helps professional services firms from around the world increase their revenue and profitability by acquiring new clients. My guest today is Harrison Louca, co-founder of HJL Accountancy, a Southeast London-based accountancy practice. The firm focuses on cutting through jargon and helping directors truly understand their numbers, not just handing over reports, but showing what those numbers actually mean, how to spot potential issues early, and how to use them to make smarter decisions. HJL Accountancy works with a wide-ranging team of UK-based professionals, all operating remotely. Their flexible model supports Harrison's semi-nomadic lifestyle, allowing him to explore the world while continuing to grow and develop the business. Harrison, welcome to the podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to this conversation, primarily because I think it's really interesting how the business has allowed you to live a certain kind of life, right? Or a certain kind of lifestyle. So I think that's really interesting. I'm looking forward to digging into that a little bit deeper. But for all those out there, and I feel like the best place to start with any podcast is for all the viewers and listeners out there who may not know who Harrison Louca is. Can you share a little bit more about yourself and a little bit more about your business?
Sure. So I started the company in 2019, went to university, did business studies, graduated from there, went straight into SEMA, got my first job in accountancy, which was working for a vehicle rental company, stepped from that into practice, did practice for a year and thought I'm never going to do that again. And now I'm running my own practice. Worked for a Charlton Athletic Football Club for a little bit, which is maybe a little bit controversial as a Crystal Palace supporter, but there we are. And then worked my way up to become a finance manager and division manager, just as I was doing my final steps of my qualification, got qualified and then thought, right, yeah, now I want to do my own thing. And launched that November 2019, just before the pandemic hit.
Wow. Timing, right?
Tell me about it.
Well, that's really interesting. I guess a good place to start would be how you handled starting a new business as the pandemic arrived.
I would say actually it helped us in some ways because the pandemic was basically propped up or created all these schemes that you could apply for, like furlough, self-employed income support and all that kind of thing. And it became quite clear that a lot of accountants were doing the bare minimum for their clients and not really exploring what grants and things they could apply for. So it put quite a bit of doubt into the market and caused people to actually start to think about, is this accountant the right accountant for me? So actually it probably helps us win clients. And I also feel like before, what probably would have happened when somebody wanted to switch an accountant was they would have gone to the other accountant's office and had a face-to-face meeting with them. I was running it from Spain out of an Airbnb. So that need for a face-to-face meeting in an office vanished. I guess right place, right time.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And we actually speak about this a lot internally. Since the pandemic, and this is part of the processes we help a lot of our clients with, is the digital side of things has become more accustomed to areas of the market that weren't necessarily accustomed to it previously, right?
Definitely.
And so people have become much more comfortable running sales calls or running client service calls or check-in calls over Zoom, MS Teams, online and virtually. And so that opens up a real host of opportunity as well as a different market to work in completely to what we were doing in 2018, 2019, pre-pandemic.
I mean, I would say I can count on maybe not one hand, but both hands, how many face-to-face client meetings I've had. Whereas I have maybe 2 or 3 client meetings a day over Zoom.
Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like and I think this is common for most businesses, is now in the world of B2B, every business is now experiencing a similar paradigm in the fact that, okay, well, we don't always have to see our clients face to face. It might be once a quarter, once a half year, if it's needed at all. And so that really does bring out an opportunity of, okay, well, we can focus on reducing overhead. We can focus on actually being more remote, hiring out office space, that type of stuff. So talk to me about a little bit more about your journey into entrepreneurship. And as you said there, you were running calls started your company from
I
Spain.
started it in Malaga.
Yeah, that's not too bad, right?
This was pretty good, I'd say.
Yeah. So talk to me more about that.
Yeah. So my dad ran his business, had his own business from when I was a kid. So I would say entrepreneurship within my family was quite normal. And so I guess I followed in his footsteps a little bit. But that desire to take that risk of branching out of employed income and starting your own thing, I guess, was like ingrained in me. And I guess as an accountant, right, you can set up this business which can make money, but it doesn't require that many overheads. I mean, you might have a professional subscription, which mine is with SEMA. But in terms of, do I need an office space right now? No. Post-pandemic, no. Do I need to invest in a lot of capital, plant and equipment and machinery? Also, no. It's just a service business, right? So it's really easy to get off the ground.
It's interesting you say that, primarily because service businesses are naturally require a lot of sweat equity.
Yeah.
It's a grind.
That.
Exactly. You might not be having to put in capital or have those other costs, but the cost is your time.
Yeah.
It's your energy. It's actually your expertise as well, right?
Yeah.
I want to touch on, you mentioned you're SEMA qualified. What's the difference between a SEMA qualified accountant versus an ACA, ACCA accountant?
So there's stereotypes, right? ACA and ACCA are seen as being number crunchers, sort of. They have really, really in-depth tax knowledge, and that's taught to them in their course. SEMA is more aimed at commercial organizations and stepping up into the C-suite and being like a CFO. So it teaches you, it's almost like a natural continuation from a business studies degree. It's split into 3 pillars. 2 of those pillars are business performance and entrepreneurship, and the other one is finance. So actually the finance is only a third of the...
oh, wow.
Yeah. And then I had to learn a lot of tax knowledge and legislation from starting my business to now.
It's so true. Like, you, especially starting your own business, you think to yourself, when you take that jump from employed to self-employed, you realize that in employed, you might have had to be super specialist in what you knew. But as self-employed, as a business owner or as someone who's running it, you need to know a little bit about everything, because you have to be able to offer these kinds of services to your clients, right? And if you only can provide something very, very niche, then it becomes a thing of, okay, well, how would you get more of those customers? And naturally, there's more questions that come with niching down and not niching down and that type of stuff, but which always helps. So talk to me about, obviously being SEMA qualified, you understand how to manage a business and how to do it effectively, especially running your own business as well. What are your tips for running a business effectively?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say try and surround yourself with experts. If you know that you do one thing really, really well and you might have a weak area somewhere else, I would say it's a good idea to find somebody that can support you in that area specifically. So if you want to do some marketing, don't butt your head against the wall trying to figure out marketing on your own. Go and speak to somebody that works in marketing. But also being able to trust the team that you build and ensuring basically that communication is transparent, clear and concise, and then trusting the team to carry out those instructions rather than micromanaging them every step. I think that's quite important, especially for me, because all of my team is remote. You have to have a base level of trust there that they're going to take your instructions and actually carry them out to the letter, because you can't be watching them from your office, as they might want back in an old stuffy accountancy practice.
It's interesting you said that again, because I think it's very common amongst accountants as well. The mere fact that it's quite a technical kind of space, there can be a level of micromanagement or control when running a business where you go, oh, come on, it needs to be like this or it needs to be like that. And so just having trust in your team, that advice goes a long way. And even finding the right experts around you to be able to build your business and or bring in the right types of advice into the business. It's important because you don't know everything. And one of the first rules of entrepreneurship is you don't know everything. And there's too many things to know. So whenever you get the chance, bring someone in to help you out, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think, when it comes to like hiring, I think people make snap decisions whether to hire. And then even if it's a bad fit, it can take a while to make the decision to get rid of that person because their human emotions become involved as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You mentioned earlier that you had to do a little bit more learning on the tax side of things, having been SEMA qualified and had a business degree. Talk to us about maybe some underrated tax saving strategies most business owners.
Yeah. So I feel like most directors now know that they should be paying themselves a split of salary and dividends. I think maybe what they don't know is that the company can also pay into a pension scheme, which increases their net wealth as a person, but also is an allowable expense for a company. And also you can do things like if you work in a R&D applicable space, I feel like most people look at an R&D scheme and go, actually, that's too much paperwork for me. But if you get the right accountant in that can help you with that, then making sure that you take advantage of that kind of scheme or annual investment allowance, things like that can really, really help. I feel like what you really need is an accountant that can speak business language rather than accountancy jargon, because if you speak to the wrong accountant, you'll just get, your eyes will glaze over within about 30 seconds.
Been there.
And then maybe other things like making sure that you claim like your split of use of home, making sure that you claim the right amount of travel, talking to an accountant, having an open and honest discussion with an accountant, right? So some people will focus on saving tax, but then they might be thinking, well, in the future, I want to apply for a mortgage. And ultimately, if you save too much tax, then you're impacting your affordability when it comes to mortgage applications. I think the right accountant will take your big picture goals and then apply that holistically to your accounts, is what I would say.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's a great point you mentioned. If you're looking for a mortgage and you're only paying yourself basic rate income, in the long term, is that going to give you the home that you want? Or is it like, do you know what I mean? And
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk to me about some common misconceptions that there may be out there on accountants or accounting.
Yeah, so I feel like maybe the stereotypical accountant is very boring, stuffy, wears a suit and a tie. And I would say that's not always the case. Depending on the accountant that you end up speaking to, some of us are actually quite interesting. I mean, I have a running joke with my clients that I've had for a few years now, where whenever they join a call, they're like, "Oh, what beach you on now?"
Love it.
And I think just basically you need to, it's not, as I said, it's not just about saving tax. But also a lot of people will only come to their accountant once a year when it's, 3 days before the year-end submission deadline to just report on everything that's already happened. I think if you're able to have a conversation with your accountant before the year's finished, actually they can do a lot more work in terms of making your accounts paint the picture that you want it to paint rather than coming to them after the fact.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's easy to just, I think that's a common thing that happens with accountants as well. And you're seeing a lot more of a shift of accountants trying to be less one-stop shop, kind of one time a year, get the accountants out of the way. But it requires a certain level of service that not all accountants are capable of providing or accounting firms are able to provide. And so you're absolutely right. You have to take a client service approach first to be able to go, okay, how do we make it so that we think about the value we're providing to our clients first, as opposed to, let's just get as many accounts through the door and get the business moving.
So that's sort of how I've structured my team. So I'm at the top, and then I have a practice manager underneath me, and then there's another layer underneath the people that are actually doing the work. The practice manager manages them and reviews the work and ensures that it's compliant. I keep an eye on when it gets complicated, of course. But I see my job, I would say I'm not really an accountant anymore. I'm a business manager and a client relationship manager, because I'm looking at what can I be doing for these specific clients that's going to make their life better, take the stress out of accounting and make it seem approachable, because I feel like most people hear the word tax and then they shut down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Basically, if you're with the right accountant, they'll help you, and it's not punishment.
It's spot on. Because I guess your job as a business owner isn't to be the person doing the job, right? You're building a service that provides value to your clients, and so you have to bring in the right type of people to do that under the values of your organization.
Exactly.
And your remit. 100%. So talk to me about being a digital nomad. And I know that term is being used more and more these days in terms of running a business from beach in Spain or the woods in Bali or something like that. Talk to me about that. How have you managed to do that? How have you structured it so that you were able to live the life that you're able to live now?
Yeah. So as I said, with structuring the team in that way, so I spent 18 months in Mexico. And as you can imagine, there's quite a big time difference to the UK client base. So setting up the team in such a way that they can handle most of the output, and I get involved when something gets complicated, or I get involved when I need to speak to a customer and see what their goals are, basically over the next year to 2 or 3 years' time. I structured my time in Mexico so that I would start working in about 4 or 5 a.m. Mexico time to basically make my hours overlap with the UK as much as possible without waking up at 1 a.m. But, sometimes you have to have little trade-offs like that, right? Like I got to work by a massive window. I got to see the sunrise every day, and I got to hear the morning chorus, which is not something that I ever experienced here. I think it's about work-life balance. And I think I do that pretty well. I think that I carve out my time so that I know on a Monday morning, I'm going to be looking at social media and how to get the most out of social media. Whereas on a Wednesday, I know that I'm going to be doing some more internal bits of management, maybe a bit of credit control, which I still do myself. I'm talking to clients on the phone, writing a blog post, something like that. But definitely like carving out your time so that it's used effectively, rather than waking up every day and wondering what you should be doing that day.
It's an important bit of advice you've just given there, in the sense that making sure or the time you allocate, it's clear for each day of the week, and broken down within the days as well. And as a business owner, whatever business you're running, especially if you're running a small business, things can easily get ahead of you as well, if you're not constantly on top of things. So in terms of then the management and hiring of a remote team, you strike me as someone who's clearly very trusting, right? You understand the role of, okay, well, I need to delegate to elevate. It's not something that comes easy to a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners.
I would say that didn't come easy to me at first. For the first couple of years, as you said about sweat equity, I was putting a lot of time into making sure that all work was done. And eventually I got to the point where my thought process was, I can't actually grow anymore if it's just me. Because the main limiting factor to how much work I could output was human hours. And so I had to hire. Luckily, my first hire was great. He's not here anymore, but he was with me for the first 3 or 4 years of the company, and was somebody that I could really, really trust. And luckily, I would say I've had more positive experiences than negative experience with hiring.
I can imagine, and it's so important. That first hire is so important to get someone right and someone good. And it happened with me as well. The first hire we brought in, she's still with us and she's phenomenal, right? And it's a massive help when you have someone that has been there from early days in the business and understands what's going on. But talk to me about building a team culture, being a completely remote team. Because that culture, the word culture thrown around all the time. So tell me about how you're developing that.
I try and make sure that there's an open door policy. We might be remote, but if something's going on that somebody isn't happy with, I want to know about it so I can fix it. The worst problem an employee can have is that one that you don't know about, because then you can't fix it. And then it just builds up into this big thing that is, at some point it becomes unfixable. So Absolutely. You have to make sure that, you communicate openly and honestly and transparently. I make sure that I do not weekly, because I feel weekly would be too much, fortnightly catch-ups with all my team one-to-one. And then weekly, we have an all-hands meeting to make sure that we're all happy as a collective. And what I would do is also make sure that, on a quarterly basis, or right now I'm sat in Southeast London, but when I was in Mexico, if I was back in the country, I'd make sure that we all go out for like a team building day. So normally that would look like something like Flight Club, if you've ever been.
Yeah, great fun.
Followed by food.
Yeah.
And then, you get an activity where you get everybody mingling around and talking and focused on something that's not just talking. And then you get food afterwards. And I think that works really, really well.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it's about being as intentional as possible wherever you can. And if your team sees how intentional you are and the fact that you're going out your way to help the team and create an environment where they can do their best work, then that fosters more. We've all been in companies where we've been in the office all the time and the culture is not great. So do you know what I mean? So it's 100% agree with you there. So in this section of the podcast, we like to call the Entrepreneur's Room. And it's a series of questions we like to ask all of our guests to give our viewers and listeners an opportunity to understand how business owners and business leaders think and operate when running their business. So at this stage of the podcast, I always like to ask the same question, which is, how are you currently spending your days as a leader of the business?
So, as I said before about time blocking, I try and structure my week so that I know specific blocks of time when I have to do certain activities. So marketing I would say marketing is about trying to attract clients that don't exist yet. Client relationship management is about clients that do exist. So I separate those two things. So I feel that they're very different activities. But I also leave myself time to liaise with staff, take care of anything that might come up as like spontaneous, and also just make sure that I take time for me. I think taking time for me is really, really important.
Yeah, 100%. I think that bit is often forgotten about as business owners. Some time for reflection, some time to actually take for yourself, because it's a grind and you're constantly going. So actually having some time to go, okay, let me reset, let me allow myself to find the right place. It gives you the energy required to keep going.
I mean, I think you need that. I think it's quite often, or it's quite easy as a business owner to fall into the trap of thinking that you need to be on 24/7. And that's not good for anybody's mental health, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's also not too good for customer service, because eventually you're going to burn out and then just disappear, and they'll be wondering where you are for a couple of weeks. Whereas if you do take that time out to yourself and you make sure that, you go outside and you see the sun every now and again, I think it definitely helps.
So true. So true. I've fallen into that trap so many times, but you're doing 18-hour days, you're working ridiculous hours, and before you know it, you've not been outside in a few days. You're
I've
like,
been there.
yeah. So talk to me about, as a business owner, what are the most important metrics for you when running the business?
So I would say customer retention is very, very important. If you see a trend of a few customers leaving at once, you need to really investigate and find out why, because it tends to suggest that there's something wrong with the service that you're offering. And then the other one is, I would say, team happiness and morale. That's a really important one for me. I don't want anybody to be coming to work for me and feeling like, oh no, I have to work for that, Harrison again. I want them to be happy to work for me and for us to almost feel like a bit of a family.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Those are, without a doubt, it reminds me of the saying, when you keep your team happy, your clients will follow suit, right?
Yeah.
And they'll keep your clients happy. So 100%.
Yeah, I try to go out of my way to keep my team happy. If I think of an example, somebody told me that they had a massive power cut and their kitchen was out of action. And the first thing that I did after that was send them a delivery voucher.
Oh, wow.
Just to go out of my way to, do my little bit.
That's a nice touch. That's a nice touch, though. 100%. I can see why your team like you so much. I'm pretty sure my power's gone out. I'll get that. I'll take that.
What's your email? I'll send you a delivery.
So in terms of then growing the business, how are you currently growing the business itself? What kind of business development, sales and marketing activities are you currently doing?
So a lot of it is word of mouth, which ties into doing a good service for the customers that you already have. I feel like if you get a client, more times than not, you can turn that one client into 3 or 4 if you do a good job for them, because they will naturally talk about you. And I think, finding a good accountant is put as a topic that people often speak about. If they're down the pub or something, they'll be like, oh, do you know a good accountant? And then if you do a good job for that person, they'll spread your name. So that's one of the main ways that we have been marketing, basically. We are also just in the process of ramping up marketing activity using Google Ads, which is when I said surround yourself with experts. I'm using an external marketing person to help me with that because whilst I did work for a marketing agency for a little while, I was in the accounts department, but developing like spreadsheets of how to track success of those campaigns rather than actually knowing the nuts and bolts of how to set one up. And also using things like Instagram, which maybe accountancy isn't a very Instagrammable business, but you've got to find a little bit of humor in there where you can.
It absolutely is, though. Like, there's some great Instagram accounts out there that do phenomenal jobs, actually expanding the knowledge of what a good accountant should be and what you should really be looking at. So 100% Instagram is definitely a great spot to be. You've been running the business now for a number of years. What are the biggest lessons you could share with us today?
An interesting question. I would say one is what we spoke about before of making sure that work-life balance is good. If you don't have that, then you'll very easily burn out, and then the service that you're delivering will naturally decrease in quality. I would say that's one. And basically knowing how to connect with people from all walks of life, which is something that I feel like travel helped me with. So when I spent 18 months in Mexico, the place that I stayed wasn't a touristy destination. People didn't speak English there. So I landed and then I was like, well, I don't speak any Spanish. That needs to change. And then I integrated with a group of people that played football every morning. So a lot of my Spanish is football related, but just basically just knowing how to connect with people, how to figure out what they need, what their goals are, and how that you can deliver on that. And then basically taking responsibility for the company as a whole.
I love it. Harrison, it's been really interesting having a conversation with you. You've been a really great guest. I like to end every single podcast with the same question. And that is, if you had a magic wand you could wave to solve one business problem, what would that be?
It's a very good question. I would say basically being able to deliver the best customer service possible is at times, naturally, you might be tired and you have a phone call with a client and you're not at your best. And sometimes you want to like rewind the clock and go back and do that session again and be like, actually, I should have told you this at the time. But hindsight's 2020, right?
Yeah, tell me about it. Tell me about it. I've been there as well. You're not at your full energy levels, and 100% client service is so important. Harrison, it's been an absolute pleasure having you. You've been a great guest and some great insights that you provided for us today.
I've really enjoyed our chat.
No, it's been really great. For all those out there that might want to reach out to you, might want to find you, where would they go? How would they find you?
So my website is HJLaccountancy.com, and then on LinkedIn and then Instagram for basically HJL_accountancy.
Awesome.
That brand name.
We'll put everything in the show notes below. But thank you very much for sharing your time today.
Thanks, Saeed.